The Chevrolet Corvette boasts one of the longest and most dynamic histories in automotive history. From the narrow-bodied C1 Corvette of the 1950s to the modern mid-engine marvels of today, the Corvette has continually evolved, pushing the boundaries of design and performance. But among the 8 generations of Corvettes to be produced, one stands out with almost a mythical status: the 1967 L88 Corvette. This is the car that makes even $200,000 Corvette owners envious, and was one of the fastest production cars of its time in the world. Let's dive into the wild history and the impressive specs of this infamous 1967 L88 Corvette, and also discuss the reason behind the almost mythical status of the car. The Chevrolet Corvette was introduced in 1953 as America's first sports car. It has since gone through 8 generations. The C1, produced from 1953 to 1962, is the first generation, which initially had a 6-cylinder engine and was later modified to V8s. The C2, from 1963 to 1967, known as the Stingray, introduced the split rear window design. The C3, from 1968 to 1982, is the longest-running generation and is particularly known for its distinct Coke bottle styling. The C4, from 1984 to 1996, was a complete redesign with a focus on handling and performance. The C5, from 1997 to 2004, on the other hand, introduced a completely new chassis and improved performance. The C6, from 2005 to 2013, just refined the C5's design to improve the performance and technology factors. The C7, from 2014 to 2019, marked the last front-engine Corvette. And finally, the C8, from 2020 to present, marks the first mid-engine Corvette. To understand what made the L88 Corvette so special, we need to understand the Corvette on which it was based, the C2 generation. Built from 1963 to 1967, the C2 Corvette marked a major step forward in the development of the Corvette. Designed from the outset to utilize a V8 engine, it was wide, low, and particularly shark-like in appearance, especially with the bumpers removed. These cars featured independent rear suspension and had pretty ahead-of-its-time handling capabilities. Unlike the typical American muscle cars, these were true sports cars, only for true track enthusiasts. Early models featured the Chevy's then-dominant 327 cubic inch small block engine, which in top trim could produce over 360 horsepower. Later in the production run, Chevrolet began offering big block engines, including the 396 and the 427 cubic inch motors. These big block engines significantly increased the horsepower to well over 400, reaching around the 420 to 430 mark. This was a considerable jump from the 360 to 365 horsepower available with the top trim 327 small block. These big block Corvettes were seriously fast, with regular 427 big block models achieving 12-second quarter-mile times. Now, the L88 did use a 427 big block, but these engines were much more radical. While the regular 427s powered C2 Corvettes were already pretty elegant and formidable street machines, the L88 cars were a completely different level. Officially rated by General Motors at 430 horsepower from the factory, actual street performance results revealed that for some reason, the real power output of the L88 cars was around 540 to 550 horsepower, which was significantly higher than the factory claims. It's rumored that besides insurance reasons, GM or General Motors underrated the L88 cars to deter normal customers from buying them. Strange indeed. But compared to the other 427 Corvettes, the idea was that on paper, if they all made about the same horsepower and the other models had more options and were much cheaper, regular customers would opt for the regular 427 Corvettes. This strategy ensured that only those who truly understood the L88 Corvette's capabilities would purchase the L88 package. It can be assumed that GM wanted the L88 cars only in the hands of people who would utilize every ounce of their immense power. These engines were truly otherworldly, and astonishingly, they were even offered in a road car. To start, you were supposed to run 103-octane gas in your L88 car. The motors had 12.5-to-1 compression, forged rods, forged pistons, hardened push rods, a high-lift cam, an 850 CFM 4-barrel carburetor, and even factory aluminum heads. But the L88 wasn't just a big motor strapped to a Corvette. Everything about the L88 Corvette was designed for performance. This was a true racetrack brawler of its time. If you speak of gears, the L88 cars came standard with the M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed transmission, a robust gearbox that was needed to handle all that torque. The M22 Rock Crusher, if you're not familiar, had more straight-cut gears than other manual transmissions of the time, resulting in a very loud and distinct whine, which is a characteristic of modern race cars. Power was delivered to the rear pavement through a positraction rear end with drag-focused 4.56 rear gears. And what is this positraction, you might ask? Well, limited slip differentials are often known by the generic trademark positraction, a brand name owned by General Motors and originally used for its Chevrolet-branded vehicles. And for comfort. Comfort, what is that? Comforts were not even considered for L88 owners. No heat, no air conditioning, no radio, nothing. These cars were just built to run, and no unnecessary weight was going to hold them back. On the exterior, the C2 L88s didn't look all that different from the regular big block Corvettes in 1967. However, the later C3 generation Corvettes, which also had an L88 option, featured some minor exterior changes, like the famous L88 hood. Despite these visual tweaks, the powertrain of the C3 L88 Corvettes remained relatively the same as the C2 L88. Chevy produced the L88 Corvettes from 1967 to 1969. While most sources agree that the total number of units built was 216, it can be broken down as follows: 20 in 1967, 80 in 1968, and 116 in 1969. The 1967 model year was particularly special as it was the last year of the C2 Corvette. While the L88 package was available in both the C2 and C3 body styles, the C2 L88s are considered the holy grail for Corvette collectors, due to their rarity. Of the 216 L88 cars ever made, only 20 were from the 1967 model year in the C2 body style. And of those 20, only around 10 to 14 are known to still exist today, ready to dominate it in the streets. The problem with the L88 Corvette, which led to its relatively slow sales, was also what made it extraordinary. It was a purpose-built racer, not your typical street-friendly car. The L88 Corvette was designed for the track, but could be driven on the street, not the other way around. Its high price also contributed to its limited appeal. In the mid to late 60s, spending big money on rare track-focused cars wasn't as common as it is today. The MSRP of an L88 Corvette was just over $6,000, significantly more than a base Corvette, which cost about $4,000, and was better equipped for street use. As a result, only performance enthusiasts with deep pockets could afford an L88 Corvette. The 1967 L88 Corvette is the epitome of American muscle nonetheless. Its rarity and performance make it a jewel in any collection. The engineering behind the L88 is incredible. General Motors created a car that is, and will be, a true testament to their innovation. Now, the C3 L88 Corvettes, of which there are about 180, saw much more widespread use and recognition. They even faced C3 L88 Corvettes at prestigious events like Le Mans and the Bonneville Salt Flats. The C3 L88s have a well-documented history of racing and high-performance achievements. Fast forward to today, and the 1967 L88 Corvettes, specifically the C2 models, are among the most valuable American cars ever made. To put it in perspective, the last auction for a 1967 L88 Corvette fetched around $2.65 million. In comparison, C3 L88 cars sell for between $400,000 and $600,000. The L88 Corvette continues to draw crowds at car shows and meets around the world. Enthusiasts and collectors come together to celebrate this automotive icon, sharing stories and admiring its unparalleled design, performance, and legacy. The 1967 L88 Corvette isn't just a car, it's a legend. Its rarity, immense power, and track-focused design make it one of the most mythical Corvettes ever produced. This car represents the peak of performance and the relentless pursuit of speed that defines the Corvette legacy. So, if you ever encounter a real L88 Corvette, particularly a C2 model, make sure to get a picture with it, because there are very few left on the streets. And time isn't far from when this car is obsolete and only remains just a piece of history. If you enjoyed today's video and learning about the 1967 L88 Corvette, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more content about the world's most iconic cars. Share your thoughts in the comments below about what car you think we should cover next. Signing off until the next one.